Racks by Michael G. Coney. So this is the first book that I've read from Michael G. Coney, but I can tell you it won't be my last. Now I have this Daw Yellow Spine paperback, which I believe is the first US edition of this to come out. And you can pause there if you'd like to read the back. This book was copyright 1975, and we have cover art by Josh Kirby. And while the cover art is interesting, I don't think it does justice for the tone of this book or anything like that. It makes a lot of sense, and after finishing the book, I think it's pretty cool, but kind of threw me off a little bit of what I was going to be prepared to read here. Now, I should also state this book came out in a couple different titles. So in the US, it was under the title Racks. In the UK, it came out under the title Hello Summer, Goodbye. And in Canada, it came out under the title Pallahaxi Tide. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the plot because there was a lot of joy in unraveling this story. But in the very beginning of this Daw paperback I have, there's an author's note that I'll read to you quickly. And it says, "This is a love story and a war story and a science fiction story, and more besides. It takes place on an alien planet and there are no humans in it. Because the planet is not unlike Earth in many ways, I have assumed my aliens to be humanoid, and being humanoid, that they be subject to human emotions and frailties. I have assumed their civilization to be at the stage of development approximately to that of our year 1875, although due to the special nature of their planet, there are significant differences between their civilization and ours. I have made all these assumptions because the story is worth telling. It couldn't have been told any other way, and still remain a love story, a war story, and a science fiction story, and more besides," which was what I wanted it to be. Michael G. Coney. So, like he said, there's a few things going on in this book. Overall, you have a main character whose name is Drove, and he's at like the pubescent level of a human, so he doesn't quite get along with his parents, and he's kind of rebelling, and it follows his coming of age, and there's a love story between him and another girl named Brown Eyes. There's also another layer of this story which involves a war, like he states in here, between this planet that they're on is split between two continents, basically. And you have the continent of Urto and Asta. And these two civilizations, or whatever you want to call them, have been at war with one another. And so you have a story going on there. And then you also have this really interesting orbital dynamics of this star system that this planet is in. And I don't want to go into details because all of these things play into the plot and the unraveling of this story. But I will briefly kind of go into the intro and the setup of this plot. So when we start off in this book, our main character Drove, he's in this place that's kind of inland on this continent, and he's just kind of what you'd imagine as an average kid. And he kind of doesn't get along so much with his parents, but every summer they go down to this kind of fishing village called Pallahaxi, and they're getting ready to go on another one of these summer adventures. I think this is a really good book to read in the summer. It was just really fitting. So, but read it whenever, But so they're setting up some of the alienness of this planet and the creatures all throughout this book. And it's one of these books where you don't know exactly what's going on with some things with the planet, with the politics, with the creatures that are on the planet. And you just have to keep reading. And I promise you, Coney will explain pretty much everything as you go through it. And he does it in a very interesting, unique way. And one thing that's kind of important to set up in the beginning of this book is our main character, he does, Coney does a great job of world building and giving you the information through the eyes of this adolescent character, because it's all written through his first person view. And he tells a little story in the beginning about being out with his aunt in one of these. I could also show you that, a lot of DAW paperbacks, they start you off with an illustration. So this is kind of a version of a steam motor car in a way. Like Coney said, this kind of takes place in what we would consider 1875 technology with some differences. But our main character drove and his aunt are out, and this vehicle breaks down, and it's kind of in wintertime. And you start to realize that the inhabitants of this planet, they have this deep, unsettling, almost unnatural fear of the cold. And his aunt starts kind of going crazy. They're a little too far away from civilization, and she starts getting scared of the cold, and she starts ripping clothes off of this poor kid so that she can try to stay warm. And Drove, he's looking around and trying to figure out how to problem solve this. And there's this character here, the main big beast that's shown. They're called Lorens. And he sees some of these, and they're these docile kind of, semi-intelligent creatures that roam around the landscape here in this alien world. And he says, maybe we can cuddle with these creatures to stay warm. And she's like, you're crazy. We don't want to get near these beasts. And she goes mad, basically. She barely makes it back to town. She ends up going into a mental institution, basically, after this because of this deep fear of the cold. Well, Drove, our little kid, he ends up getting next to one of these Lorens who kind of takes him in. And then the next day, this Loren takes him back to his house, and he survives it. And, so it kind of goes to show some of the world building and setting up of what's to come later in this book. And the depiction there on this cover is kind of what I assumed of our main character kind of being taken in by this Loren and saved from the cold. So, after a little basic setup in the beginning, our main character, his dad works for like the government of this continent or this society. And they're going to Pallahaxi for kind of a vacation, but you start to realize that his dad has some business to attend here too. And there's a cannery that has some interesting things going on with it. It definitely cans fish. But there's something else that his dad gets involved with, and this becomes another mysterious element to this book. I kind of don't want to talk too much more about this book. I highly, highly recommend this to everyone. I think that the only thing that could kind of bar this from a non-science fiction reader is how alien the world is at first. And I'm sure most science fiction readers and people that watch this channel, you've read books like this, and you just kind of have to plow through, and you hope that the author is going to explain some of these questions you have. And he does, but I know this could be a big barrier for some people, and this could prevent like the average reader from maybe giving this book a try. But it's such a beautifully well-written love story with all these other layers to it. There's reveals that will kind of blow your mind. It has one of the best probably last paragraphs or last sentences in any science fiction books that I've read. It's heartfelt. There's just so many things it's got going for it. I think I've rattled off all these pros, but the only con could be, in my mind, is that this is a book written in the first person, and our narrator is an adolescent. So at times, this book does have a little bit of a YA feel to it. When he gets to Pallahaxi, it's him and a group of 4 other kids running around doing kid things and trying to kind of solve some of these mysteries that are happening all around them, getting into trouble, all this kind of stuff. And since it's from his point of view, it can come off a little bit like a YA book, especially towards the beginning. But our character, he goes through the hero's journey. If you stick with it, he will mature, he will grow, he will become, a hero in a way, and is just beautifully well written. So I found out afterwards that there was a sequel written. I think it came out after Michael Coney died, and it's called I Remember Pallahaxi. I tried to find a copy of this. Apparently, there's a kind of a small press publisher called PS Publishing, and they did a kind of a box set of this book. I think their version's called Hello Summer Goodbye, and the sequel, I Remember Pallahaxi. But I think the only way to get the sequel besides that is through an ebook. So I'll probably just buy the ebook. And I believe you can buy it through PS Publishing. And if you can't find a copy of the first book here, I saw that they had that on available for ebook too. And I think they were about like $3 each. So I highly recommend this book. I might just go ahead and read the sequel right away. I'm not sure. I'm kind of ahead of schedule for my reading plans for the month. I really only have a couple other books that I wanted to get to, so I might either just roll right into the sequel to this one, or I might kind of just pick something else out. But like I said, do yourself a favor, check this book out, and once again, thanks for watching.